Welcome back, everybody. In the last chapter, we discussed organization strategy and project selection. We talked about classifying projects, the strategic management process, and managing a portfolio system. In this chapter, Chapter 3, we'll dive into project management structures and identify the strengths and weaknesses of each. We'll also take a look at how an organization's culture plays a role in managing projects. So for this lecture, we've moved on to Chapter 3, Organization, Structure, and Culture. Organizations face a large decision when deciding on the type of organizational structure they'll use in regards to projects. The uniqueness of each project and the usual short duration make them difficult to organize. As we've touched on in previous chapters, projects often cross functions and disciplines within an organization, which can create authority and responsibility dilemmas. In order to make an appropriate choice regarding an organization's project management structure, they need to find a system that balances both the needs of the project as well as the needs of the organization. One possible structure an organization might choose is the functional organization. In this structure, an organization groups employees according to their skill sets or roles. It is a hierarchical type of organization structure where employees report to a functional manager who has a similar skill set as them. So even though top management decides which projects to implement, implementation is managed by a functional manager. This type of structure is best used when a project will rely heavily on one functional area, or one functional area has a large stake in its success. That doesn't mean other functions won't have a role in the organization. It just means the overall project will be managed within a normal hierarchy. This slide provides an example of a functional organization. This type of organization is the most common type you'll see in the workplace. It has the president at top, with the top functional managers reporting directly into the president. Each function is a separate division, sometimes referred to as silos. So, what are the advantages and disadvantages of the functional organization of projects? On the advantage side, it requires no structural or organization change. Projects are managed within the functional structure of the organization. Therefore, no radical change in operation is necessary. Because the project is contained in mostly one functional area, there's a larger pool of resources to select from, providing more flexibility for the project. Along those same lines, you will find in-depth expertise within the functional unit which has been assigned responsibility. And those experts within the function can concentrate on the most important aspects of the project. When the project comes to an end, those who have been working on it can easily transition back to their day-to-day activities, as they have likely been responsible for those activities throughout the project. However, the functional structure can cause a lack of focus for the people working on the project. These people are still responsible for their day-to-day activities, which may pull their attention and focus away from the project itself. Project responsibilities can easily be pushed aside in order to complete their normal work activities. As an example, imagine the tension if the marketing people had to wait for the operations people in order to complete their segment before they could proceed. Things wouldn't go over very well. This structure can also result in poor integration as functional specialists are more concerned with their part in the project rather than the overall success of the project, which is why lack of ownership in this structure is a possibility. The structure can also be quite slow as decisions have to be circulated through the normal management channels. Another possible structure for organizing projects is through dedicated teams. Dedicated teams operate as separate units apart from the other groups within the organization. Rather than reporting through their functional manager, team members report directly to a full-time project manager. This project manager is often responsible for recruiting project resources, including personnel. They also have the authority to assign priorities and direct the work of the team members assigned to the project. The sole purpose of the team is to drive completion of the project with no responsibility for day-to-day activities. Dedicated teams are also referred to as projectized organizations. This slide provides an example of how a dedicated team would be organized within an organization. You can see that the dedicated team is pulled out separately from the functional teams and that the project manager reports directly into the president. There are several advantages of utilizing dedicated teams. First, they're simple. All personnel are dedicated to the project, allowing the functional units to operate without project work interruption, which also leads them to being fast. The team members are fully focused on the project and not distracted by other obligations. Since decisions are made within the dedicated team, response time is much faster. Dedicated teams typically share a common goal and personal responsibility towards the success of the project, leading to a cohesive team. In addition, the dedicated team consists of cross-functional personnel, which are all committed to the overall project and not just their area. But of course, there are also disadvantages of implementing dedicated teams. For one, they're expensive. You need to add management positions plus additional personnel, which are dedicated full-time to the project. Since more than one project is going on at a time, this results in duplication of efforts across all projects. Sometimes, dedicated teams can lead to internal strife over loyalties, and because these teams are self-contained, the level of expertise is limited by the skill level and expertise among the people. If the team doesn't have much technological expertise, the project won't either. Then, of course, once a project has ended, the team disbands. In some cases, their former positions may not be available, making it a difficult post-project transition. This slide provides an alternate view of how dedicated teams or projectized structures may look. In this view, the dedicated teams are still together. However, this view expands the team view to show the different functions within the dedicated team. The project manager has authority over the work priorities and still reports directly into the president in this case. The matrix model is a hybrid organizational form in which a project crosses over, or is overlaid, on several of the normal functional structures. The result of this is that there are now two chains of command, the project manager and the functional manager. The functional manager ensures the project tasks will be assigned and completed per the project schedule and per the promptings of the project manager. The matrix structure is designed to use resources working on multiple projects as well as being capable of performing normal functional duties. This allows the organization to fully optimize its resources and achieves a greater integration by recognizing the legitimate authority of the project manager and the expertise of its personnel. Here's an example of what the matrix structure looks like. On the left-hand side, you will see the projects that personnel are assigned to, while across the middle, you see what functions they belong to. Here is a nice visual layout of what the project manager is responsible for answering, what the functional manager is responsible for answering, and what issues they need to negotiate on to determine the answer. There are three different types of matrix forms of organization. One is the weak form. This is very similar to a functional organization, with the exception that there is a designated project manager responsible for coordinating project activities. The functional manager still has authority over the personnel on the project, but the project manager does have indirect authority. Another is the balanced form. In this form, the project manager is responsible for defining what needs to be accomplished, and the functional manager is concerned with how it will be accomplished. The project manager establishes the overall plan, integrates completed tasks, sets schedules, and monitors progress. The functional manager is responsible for assigning personnel and executing their project work per the schedule set forth by the project manager. The third is the strong form. In this form, the project manager controls most aspects of the project, such as assignment of functional personnel. They control when and what resources are needed and have final say on major project decisions. The functional manager has title over the unit and is often used as a subcontractor for the project. Here's a list of some of the advantages and disadvantages of using the matrix form. The matrix form shares resources across multiple projects within functional divisions, making it quite efficient. This reduces duplication of effort as seen in the projectized structure. It also has a strong focus on projects due to having a designated project manager. And since a project organization is overlaid across functions, specialists maintain ties with their functional group and are not displaced when a project ends. This helps create an easier post-project transition. And because of the way they are set up, the matrix structure provides a flexible utilization of resources and expert skill sets within the organization. However, the matrix form can cause tension between functional managers and project managers, creating dysfunctional conflict. Additionally, this tension can be the result of conflicting agendas, project and operational, and accountabilities, to the project and to the operational demands. When equipment and resources are being shared between project and functional activities, it can lead to conflict and competition. Infighting can occur between project managers about what is best for their project. This form can also be quite stressful as the team members are taking orders from their functional manager as well as one or two more project managers. Decision-making can get bogged down as negotiations between project managers and functional managers must take place. This can cause delays, causing the project to be slowed. So, how does an organization choose the right project management structure? Here are some items for them to consider. First, they need to determine how important the project is to the organization's success. If over 75% of the work being done involves projects, then the organization should consider a fully projectized structure. If the organization performs both standard operations and projects, then a matrix structure would be appropriate. If the organization has very few projects, then a less formal arrangement is probably all that is needed. For instance, functional structure. Finally, dedicated or projectized teams could be formed only on an as-needed basis or could be outsourced. The new consideration is how available are resources. Matrix structures share resources across multiple projects and functional work while at the same time creating legitimate project leadership. For organizations who have limited resources and cannot afford to tie up critical personnel on a project, a matrix structure is appropriate. Alternatively, the organization could create a dedicated team or outsource the project when internal resources are not readily available. It is also important for the organization to consider the projects themselves. This slide lists the 7 factors that influence the choice of adopting a project management structure. The higher the importance of these 7 factors, the more autonomy and authority the project manager and the project team needs in order to be successful. Today, a growing number of companies are using the mix and match structure approach for managing their projects. Let's switch gears real quick and talk about organizational culture. So what is it? It's a system of shared norms, beliefs, values, and assumptions which bind people together and becomes a shared meaning. It reflects the personality of the organization and defines its aspects, setting it apart from other organizations, even in the same industry. Organizational culture provides a sense of identity to its members. They identify with the organization as a whole instead of with their type of job or their field of expertise. The more clearly an organization's perceptions and values are stated, the more strongly people can identify with their organization and feel a part of it. It also helps legitimize the management system of the organization and clarify authority and the way authority should be respected. Additionally, culture helps solidify the standards of behavior for the employees. It provides rules, policies, and direct supervision to oversee and control employee behavior. Deciphering an organization's culture is more than a subjective opinion someone may have about the organization. This slide provides a list of clues about the real norms, customs, and values of an organization. 1. Study the physical characteristics of an organization. This would include the dress code, architecture, and modernization of the building for all employees. 2. Read about the organization. Look at annual reports, mission statements, press releases, internal newsletters. What do they describe and what principles are espoused in those documents? 3. Observe how people interact within the organization, their pace, rituals, expressed values, who attends meetings and who does the talking, the time spent on issues. All are clues about the values of the organization's culture. 4. Interpret stories and folklore about the organization. Look for the similarities among stories told, subject matter in the stories, folklore heroes and villains, and what they suggest about the ideals of the culture. You might be wondering at this point how project management structure and culture tie together. The culture of the organization could present challenges for project managers. First, project managers have to interact with the culture of the organization and work well in the subcultures of various departments. In addition, project managers have to interact with the client or customer organization. To be able to successfully navigate the above, project managers need to be able to read and speak the culture they are working in when developing strategies, plans, and responses. This all creates a strong correlation between project management structure and the organizational culture with regard to project success. There's a metaphor that an organization's culture is a river and a project is a boat. If organizations' cultures are conducive to project management, it's like paddling downstream, or it requires much less effort. On the other hand, a toxic culture is like paddling upstream, which requires more time, effort, and constant attention to the end goal. These are cultures that discourage teamwork, have a low tolerance for conflict, and where getting ahead is less about performance and more on relationships with upper management. We've covered a lot of information on project management structures and identifying three types: functional, dedicated teams, and matrix. We learned about the advantages and disadvantages of each. We discussed organizational culture and the role it plays for project managers. The next lecture will have us jumping to Chapter 16 to learn about project management oversight. We'll discuss the importance of project oversight as well as organization project management in the long run. As always, if you have any thoughts, ideas, questions, or concerns, head on over to the discussion board under Week 2 and share them. I'd really enjoy seeing your thoughts so far and see some dialogue among the group. I'll be joining the discussions as well.